Car, man, it's just prancing like an idiot.
Hey everyone, welcome back. So, the 2025 Qatar Grand Prix has been absolutely wild, and we need to talk about what's been happening with Max Verstappen and the rest of the grid. We've had sprint qualifying, the sprint race itself, and then main qualifying, and honestly, it's been a bit of a roller coaster for the Red Bull camp. Let's break down all the key moments and what they mean heading into today's main race. Sprint qualifying, when things started going wrong. Alright, so let's rewind to Friday and sprint qualifying. Max Verstappen ended up in 6th place, and that's not where you expect to see a 4-time world champion, right? But here's what happened. Verstappen was struggling massively with bouncing in his Red Bull. Like really bad bouncing. On his first flying lap, he actually ran wide at turn 4, which already wasn't ideal. And then over the radio, he's complaining about the bouncing.
Car, man, it's just prancing like an idiot.
When the dust settled, he was nearly half a second behind pole position. 0.473 seconds to be exact. And who got pole? Oscar Piastri in the McLaren. So the top 5 went. Piastri on pole, George Russell in 2nd for Mercedes, Lando Norris 3rd in the other McLaren, Fernando Alonso 4th for Aston Martin, and then Yuki Tsunoda 5th in the other Red Bull. Max down in 6th. Not great, Bob? Not great. The bouncing thing is really interesting because it's not just a minor annoyance. It's genuinely preventing Max from pushing the car to its limit. You can't commit to corners when the car's jumping around beneath you? It's like trying to thread a needle while riding a mechanical bull. Theoretically possible, but why would you put yourself in that situation? The sprint race, a brilliant start, but still not enough. Saturday brought us the sprint race, and this is where things got a bit more interesting. Max actually had a brilliant start, and I mean brilliant. He gained 2 positions on the opening lap, jumping from 6th up to 4th. That's vintage Verstappen, right? Aggressive, committed, making moves when it counts. But here's the problem. He then tried to overtake Norris for 3rd place and couldn't make it stick. And throughout the race, he's still on the radio saying the bouncing is still very bad. So yeah, he improved his position, but he finished 4th, and both McLaren drivers finished ahead of him. That's not ideal when you're trying to defend a championship. The sprint showed us something important though. Max's racecraft is still there. His starts are still phenomenal, but when the car has fundamental issues like this bouncing problem, there's only so much driver talent can compensate for. It's frustrating to watch, honestly, because you know Max has the skill, but the tool isn't cooperating. Main qualifying, P3 and mixed feelings. Then we get to Saturday evening and main qualifying for the actual Grand Prix. Max qualified 3rd, which sounds pretty decent, right? P3 isn't bad at all. But when you look at the margins, it tells a different story. Piastri took pole position again with a 1:19.387. Norris was 2nd, about a 10th behind. And Max, he was 0.264 seconds off pole and 0.156 seconds behind Norris. So we're talking about really small margins, but in F1, those small margins are everything. After qualifying, Max said it was a little bit better than the sprint, which is at least progress. But he also admitted there were still limitations with the car that prevented him from pushing harder. So it's this incremental improvement thing, getting slightly better each session, but never quite getting to where they need to be. The grid for today's race is Piastri, Norris, Verstappen, 2 McLarens at the front, Max in 3rd. Not the worst position to start from, but definitely not ideal when McLaren has been the faster car all weekend. The overtaking problem. Now here's where things get really interesting for the race strategy. Max himself said that overtaking is quite hard at this track, and we saw evidence of that in the sprint when he couldn't get past Norris despite being right on his gearbox. Qatar's circuit layout just doesn't have many great overtaking opportunities. You've got your shot into turn 1 at the start, and then it gets tricky. The long, flowing corners mean you need a significant pace advantage to actually make a move stick. And with the bouncing issues, Max doesn't have that luxury. So what does this mean? Well, Max is essentially trapped in P3 unless something crazy happens. Even if he has slightly better race pace than the McLarens, which is a big if given the weekend so far, he might not be able to translate that into actual overtakes. It's like being stuck in traffic when you're late for a meeting. You know you could go faster, but the cars ahead are preventing you from doing anything about it. Championship implications. Let's talk about what's actually at stake here. Max needs to finish ahead of Lando Norris to keep his championship hopes alive going into Abu Dhabi. That's the bottom line. If Norris finishes ahead of Max today, the championship math starts looking really uncomfortable for Red Bull. Think about the psychological aspect here. For years, Max has been the one hunting people down, applying pressure, being the aggressor. Now, he's in a position where he needs something to happen. He needs to beat Norris. That's a different kind of pressure. When you're chasing rather than defending, when you're desperate rather than comfortable, mistakes happen. And McLaren knows this. They've got both cars ahead of Max. They can potentially use team strategy to help Norris if needed. Piastri could play the team game, or they could just let him race. Either way, McLaren is sitting pretty while Red Bull is scrambling. The Red Bull dilemma. So, what can Red Bull actually do about this bouncing problem? That's the million-dollar question. They could go for a more conservative setup with more downforce. That might stabilize the car, but would cost them straight-line speed. Or they could stick with the current philosophy and hope the bouncing settles down over race distance. Neither option is great. It's choosing between two bad choices. Meanwhile, McLaren doesn't have to make these compromises. Their car is stable, fast, and both drivers are comfortable pushing it to the limit. That's what a good car package looks like. The engineering battle happening behind the scenes is fascinating. Red Bull's aero philosophy this year has clearly prioritized efficiency over mechanical grip, and it's come back to bite them at the worst possible time. McLaren took a different approach, and right now it's paying off. What to watch for in today's race? So the main race is happening later today, and here's what I'm watching for. First, the start. Max's brilliant start in the sprint showed he can gain positions when the lights go out. If he can jump one or both McLarens into turn one, everything changes. But it's high risk. One mistake and he could be tangling with midfield cars. Second, the bouncing. Does it settle down over race distance as the fuel load decreases and the car gets lighter? Or does it remain a problem for all 57 laps? That'll determine whether Max can even fight for the win. Third, McLaren's team strategy. Do they let Piastri and Norris race freely, or do team orders come into play? Piastri's been faster all weekend, but Norris is the one in the championship fight. That tension could create opportunities for Max if things get messy between the teammates. And finally, tire degradation. Qatar is brutal on tires with all these high-speed corners. If Max can make his tires last better than the McLaren's, he might have a shot at them in the final stint. It's a long shot, but it's something. So there you have it, the complete breakdown of what's been a pretty challenging weekend for Max Verstappen. From P6 in sprint qualifying to P4 in the sprint race to P3 in main qualifying, he's been making progress, but still stuck behind the McLarens. The bouncing issues have been the story of the weekend, and unless Red Bull finds a magic fix, Max is going to have to pull something special out of the bag in the race. The championship fight continues, and honestly, it's been fascinating to watch this shift in momentum. We'll see how it all plays out in a few hours. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.